So as many of you know, I'm a chaplain at Stetson University. And one of the best parts of that job is I'm sort of everybody's chaplain. You don't have to be a Buddhist to come see me if you're a Stetson student. And so one of the neatest things I get to do is find these areas where religions intersect, places where the Dharma is revealed, even if it's not referred to as the Dharma, spoken of as in a different language or expressed in a different rite or scripture. And one of these opportunities I get every year around this time, the oldest tradition at Stetson, going back to 1948, is the lighting of the Yule log. And it started with students and faculty singing Christmas carols around a fire in a fireplace. And it has since evolved into a real multi-faith celebration of what we kind of see now as a season of light. So the Yule log, for those of you who don't know, it goes back to Scandinavia and Northern Europe, that kind of area. And it's kind of acknowledges the time when the days stop getting shorter and start getting longer. And there's more light coming into the world, really in the cycle as the earth goes around the sun and the cycle of seasons and so on. But as humans living on this earth, we recognize that light is essential to our existence. It makes it possible for plants to provide food and make oxygen so as we can breathe, and light awakens our minds and our hearts. If you ever are meditating and you start feeling drowsy, you can actually kind of lighten your mind. You sort of like think about light, and it will wake you up a little bit. You can open your eyes just a little bit and let in some light, and it will perk you up. So it awakens our minds and our hearts, and it illuminates the world so that we can see. And the coming of light into darkness reminds us of the cycles of life we all experience. So sometimes we all go through sort of dark times in our life. And then if we look, even during the darkness, we find that there's light available to us. There's one of my teachers likes to work with maxims, sort of phrases that kind of encapsulate a teaching. And one of his is examine life outside the boundaries of your suffering. In other words, I'm suffering. What else is going on? What's going on out there? And so if you look at the margins, of your darkness, you'll find that there's light available to you. So anyway, it makes sense, I think, that the world's cultures seem to universally celebrate the coming of light into our lives during times of darkness. And in Buddhism, the spiritual path really is defined by the concept of enlightenment, the light of truth brightening our hearts. And so many other traditions celebrate around this time of year, when the darkness of long nights begins to give way to longer, brighter days. So there's this kind of cool thing that we do at Stetson as part of this particular ceremony that I really like. After we light the Yule log, which is kind of a small, they call it a bonfire, but it's more like a campfire. It's about one, if you go to the Publix and get one of those things of firewood, that's about how much wood we burn. So it's not a big deal. But we always bring forward a log from last year's fire to use on it, so that the fire from one year kind of moves forward into the next year, which is cool. But after we light the fire, everybody comes up. We pass out holly sprigs. So holly, being kind of a symbol of the season, right? We pass out these sprigs of holly, and everybody gets to come up one at a time and put a sprig into the fire. And as you do, we commit any misdeeds, regrets, hindrances from the past year to the flame. So symbolically, we're letting go of these so that we can make a fresh start. And then everybody gets a candle. These days, the candles are battery operated, and they leave and they go off to get hot cocoa somewhere. So we kind of get to see the light that we created there at the center of campus spread, out into the world. And it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful moment. This year, because of COVID-19, classes actually ended this week before Thanksgiving. And so the traditional time for the Yule log ceremony wouldn't be until next Tuesday. It's the first Tuesday of December, which happens to be December 1st. And we're not allowed to have big events anyway. And I didn't want to be the chaplain who ended this 72-year now tradition of Yule log lighting, right? So we had to figure out a way to do it anyway. And so we decided that we would light the fire, and then on the day, on this next Tuesday, we'd post images of it online and ask people to post their own images of their own celebrations. So that even though we can't be together in space and time, we can still be together as one, wherever we are. So since there were just a few of us, I got to do a bunch of holly sprigs. Usually I only get one. The chaplains come down, we put ours in, and everybody follows us. But I got to put several in. And so as I was letting go of these sprigs of holly, putting them into the fire, I got to think about the kinds of things that I wanted to let go of. So, 2020, I mean, we all want to let go of this whole year, right? It's been very unusual. But, there's always things that we're better off without. Things, habits, states of mind, viewpoints, and that sort of thing. The sort of attitudes and prejudices and all those kinds of things that if we let go of them, we're going to live lighter, freer lives. So there's a Zen koan that I really like that kind of makes me think about this. Koans are those little stories everybody's heard, does the dog have Buddha nature? What's the sound of one hand clapping? Those things. Well, this one is from a collection of koans called The Gateless Gate. And it relates a story about the sixth patriarch of Zen, who lived around 700 Common Era. So at this monastery where he was the abbot, whenever there was a Dharma talk, they would hoist a flag outside the temple to let all the monks and everyone know that there was going to be a Dharma talk. And so one day, these two monks started arguing about this flag. And one of them said, the flag is moving. And the other one said, no, the flag's not moving, the wind is moving. And so they had started having this really heated argument about whether the flag was moving or the wind was moving. Well, the sixth patriarch, coming along to give his Dharma talk, coming down the path, hears this. And he says, not wind, not flag, the mind is moving. So monks heard about this teaching and word spread around it. And then sometime later, there were a group of these monks at a nun's temple nearby. And they started having a conversation, and somebody started relating this wind and flag story. And the nun, the Sukho, hearing it, rejected Ino's remark too. It's not the wind, it's not the flag, it's not the mind. And the nun's comment became the final word on this. So this is what you get. This is why this is a koan and not just a Dharma talk. You have to understand what she means. So what she means is you got to let go of ideas like wind and flag and mind in order to really experience reality for yourself, in order to see what's really going on. So this is how you experience oneness. When we did our praying earlier, there's one point where we're one with different Buddhas. We're one with the Buddha of the 10 directions and things like that. How do you become one with Buddha? Let go of the idea that there's something that's Buddha and there's something that's you, right? So this takes some practice, and it's not something that's going to happen automatically today, but you have to kind of work with this letting go. So the monks who were having this argument had gotten hooked on their own preferences, their dogmas, their needs to be seen as right, their ways of seeing the world, and their beliefs about what the world should be. So Ino's comment was to help them see how their minds were being pushed around by this clinging, and the resulting wind of mental fabrication was creating this storm. And he was correct in that their mind was determining their experience, not the wind or the flag. The nun's remark suggested that they learned to simply hold experience in their minds gently. They hadn't realized yet the stillness of mind. And so they were easily unmoored by the pull of their opinions and traditions and all of those things, yanking them this way and that. So they hadn't learned yet that their meditation was about letting go. And if you don't learn to let go in meditation, it's very hard to learn to let go in daily life. So in terms of the path of practice, I understand Dharma Compassion talked recently about the Eightfold Path. Well, one factor of the Eightfold Path is right effort. Right effort is partly about letting go. If something that leads to stress arises, we learn to release it. Abandon it is a term that you often see when you read, translations from the Pali Canon. The Buddha will say, I abandoned this. It really means release, let go, turn loose, right? So if you're meditating and anger comes up or anxiety, you let that go. If you try to keep it from returning, but not by repressing it or telling yourself you can't have that thought, but by making your mind still. You try to prevent the arising of harmful thoughts by keeping the mind settled down. But right after the other side of this is you cultivate helpful mental states like gratitude, like metta, goodwill, and maintain those. And so there's this two-part process, letting go and cultivating. So when you're getting to the end of the year and you decide you're going to let go of some things from the past, don't just turn loose of something, but plant something good, right? It's sort of like gardening. If you just let the weeds run away with the garden, it's very hard to find the fruit. You can't plant fruit without first pulling up the weeds. If you put down enough good stuff in your garden, the fruit will actually choke out the weeds eventually, right? So it's this two-part process, but the first thing you got to learn to do is let go. And a lot of the stuff that we have to let go of is really dear to us. I got to tell you, I like being right. And I like it when everybody else knows I'm right. But sometimes you got to let go of that, because you can't learn if you already know everything. There's a story that I'm sure I've probably told here before. It's pretty well known about a samurai who comes into a tea house demanding to be taught the tea. In Japan, there's this very ritualized way of making and drinking tea. And he's kind of arrogant, and he's, blustery and all of that stuff. And so the tea master doesn't really want to deal with him. But because he's so insistent and because any consequences, the master goes, okay, fine, I'll teach you tea. And so they sit down, and the master is very mindfully making this tea. And he puts the cup in front of the samurai, and he starts to pour the tea in. And he pours and he pours and he pours, and it overflows up into the samurai's lap, which of course infuriates him. And so the master says, you're like that teacup. If you're already full, I can't put anything on. All you'll do is make a big mess. So when you come in here, the first thing to do is start letting go of stuff. Somebody was asking me earlier why we do this ritual incense offering at the beginning of services. And, we say some words like precepts incense, samadhi incense, wisdom incense, liberation incense, and everybody just says it. Probably nobody thinks much about what it says. But actually, the incense is a metaphor for the practice itself. If we passed out a stick of incense to everybody, it wouldn't do anybody any good. You could walk around going, oh, look, I've got a stick of incense. But when we light it, it releases its fragrance, and we all get to experience it. We only got to light one. Everybody experiences the fragrance of the incense. And that's the metaphor here. As we let go of things, then we're able to share the fragrance of the results of our practice. And the words we say at the beginning, precepts, incense, samadhi, incense, wisdom, incense. So precepts, you might I would actually probably tweak that one a little bit. There's in Theravada Buddhism, you'll hear this a lot, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Sila meaning moral restraint, the factors of the Eightfold Path, right speech, right action, right livelihood, restraining our actions so that we don't cause harm. Samadhi, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, training the mind so that the mind learns to see clearly, so we don't get hung up in wind flag mind. Right. And Panya incense, wisdom incense, right view, right resolve, so that we know what leads to suffering and we know what doesn't lead to suffering. So we know what to let go of. And then we set our minds on doing that which leads to freedom and does not lead back to stress. So when you come in, and when we do that, think about what you need to give up, what you need to let go of, so that you can experience the fragrance of the Dharma. I'm done. Okay.
For some reason, coincident, last week, now and we talk about letting go.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So now we have been to listen to sense words. Now, have any questions, comments? Yes. Speak loud.
Something more talking about the consciousness, we do it every week. We talk about knowing with consciousness, no IL, and so forth, knowing. So, what is it?
So what do we have? Is that what you asked? So it's very interesting because this relates a lot to a conversation I had with somebody recently. Somebody invited me to join a Facebook group, and it was about secular Buddhism, and they had posted a thing about self-improvement. And so I had to ask them, what self are you going to improve? Because if form is not self, and feeling is not self, and perception is not self, and cognitions are not self, and awareness of all these things is not self, what are you improving? What do you own? I don't own this. It's here, I get to walk around in it, but I can't decide how long it's gonna live, right? How tall it's gonna be, any of that kind of stuff. I don't own my perceptions. I can't decide that I'm only going to smell sweet things and I'm not going to smell compost, right? I can't decide what I'm going to be aware of. I can't be aware of something that's going on, 3 miles away or whatever. I can't even control, for sure, own what arises in my mind, right? If you don't believe me, when the bell rings to start meditation, go, okay, I'm not going to have another thought for the next 25 minutes. Good luck with that. So what do I own? I own what I do, right? My actions, I have ownership of. My karma, that's what that means. So if I wanted to improve where I end up, I would improve what I do. And that you do have ownership of. Unfortunately, no one else can relieve you of your negative karma. You have to live it off. You can have help, certainly, which is why we do the offering to the hungry ghosts and stuff like that. But ultimately, we have to experience the fruit of our action. Does that answer your question?